what I learned, and I learned critically, is that when people get to know you and know what you're about and what your essence is, they then trust you on a personal level. So then whether you're a plumber, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're a chiropractor, whether you're a coach, whatever, they're going to trust you because they trust the person.
All right, well, welcome to Wabi Sabi, and this
Hello,
is session
everybody.
number 3. Hey, Jim, how's your week, man? How's everything? How's life in Spain?
I've had a great week. Laurence, you might have seen yesterday, our dog arrived from Australia.
So happy, so excited for you.
Thank you. It was tears, emotion. There's a lot of tail wagging, and that was just me. That wasn't even the dog, right? So I was super excited. We spent like 6.5 hours at the airport just doing the paperwork, right? So it's 6.5 hours, because you got to go from this place to that place. You got to get a stamp, it's just, there's no efficiency.
Hey, so Jim, why was that not on Facebook? Why was that on the post, right?
I just wanted, because it would have downgraded the whole story if I said, hey, I spent 6.5 hours at the airport just going from one terminal to the other, just getting people to stamp pieces of paper.
Well, so I want to, like, before we continue on this podcast, I want to sort of state the fact, like, one of the most important things we always hear about on Facebook posts, Instagram posts and stuff, like the life that you see is a projection of the best highlights of anybody's life at any given moment in time.
Yeah.
And like in this podcast, we're going to highlight all the other stuff that you never see behind the scenes because we have time to actually digest that. So I think like that's important. That's why I mentioned about the 6 hour thing.
Yeah.
That is not uncommon when it comes to being in Europe for waiting 6 hours. We just had a friend, a common colleague who just moved here to Portugal. With the, people. I won't want to say any names just in case. But he just called me up. Like he arrived yesterday and he's like, "Hey, my dog's arrived. They use my number just in case the contact." And he's like, "Yeah, it's like it's 2 hours now. They landed 2 hours ago, and we're just getting a bit worried." I'm like, "Dude, 2 hours? The dog's probably just barely out of the the cargo area. Like you gotta wait like at least 4 hours and don't stress, So yeah, it's amazing.
That was it. So that was 6 hours after they told us to go. Don't even bother coming at. So if the arrival time was that, we ended up, we came 2 hours later, as they said, and then we still had 6 hours after that.
Oh, that's because they had to add the siesta in there.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's the go. But listen, on weeks. Anybody who follows Laurence on socials knows that his unofficial role is the Ministry of Introductions for everybody who moves to Portugal. How's that been? You've had more dinners, out. You said last time than how long? It's just
Karen was saying like you should just post up all the pictures like of the people that I had dinner with over the last sort of 6-7 weeks, and then just post them and like this has been like my last 8 months. Like seriously, honestly, no joke. I had at least one visitor that I know, like someone, that I know and I've had dinner with every single week for the last 6-7 weeks in a row, one a week. And I still seriously have at least 3 more to go. Right. And this is going before even up to the day of the event, pretty much like, the event that's coming up in, that I'm having in Portugal. And so like, that will be like 10 weeks in a row. Like where I'm at least one person. And these are a mixture of people can ask like, so, where they come from? Well, like they're fellow chiropractor friends. They're, there are, people from Australia, they're friends, like, friends. And then there's people that I've never met before other than on Facebook, like they just reached out and go, "Hey, Laurence, I hear you're in Portugal and I'm coming, blah, blah, blah." Like, so I literally met 2 people in the last 2 days that I've never met in person, and I met them here in Portugal, which is so strange.
Isn't that amazing? Actually, this is a beautiful little segue into what we want to talk about today, right? I was just paying out on you there in terms of the whole role, but what you've just highlighted exceptionally well is, and really how we came to this conversation was, I was just saying to you just before we started recording, we were meant to record tomorrow and we've moved it to a day earlier because I've got a meet and greet with a group of lawyers, bankers tomorrow. And that, ordinarily that sounds like a barrel of laughs, that one, but they're really people that are a community that I want to get connected with. Yeah. And, it's amazing where I didn't know these people, but they were really helpful in instrumental in helping us get to Spain. And I remember reaching out to them at the time and saying, listen, when I get to Spain, in some way, shape or form, I'd really like to collaborate with you. I want to do some work with you in some way. And they really took that on. We established a professional connection and relationship, and I'm going to a meet and greet tomorrow. And really, that was it was a genesis of, because they work with the ideal clients that I work with. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at that and went, okay, this is an environment, this is a group that it'd be great for me to collaborate with, to work with, to get to know, to associate with, because they service and support the people that I do as well, but in a different capacity.
What highlights though, Jim, like what highlights, the difference, I think that it's really important. So we'll get into the nitty gritty in terms of, what you're doing, but I think it requires a specific mindset around an approach, right? A mindset and an approach and a philosophy maybe to do what you just are doing tomorrow. Right. And I think that the mindset is that, you and I both moved to a brand new country, which, I think, a couple of people in Spain. Like I knew like 0 people.
I think
here, right?
one that I knew. So I had one on you.
Right. So we kind of moved into a new country with not knowing a single soul, like one or two people. Yeah, I knew one person here. I actually knew 2 people, but one left like a week.
You're liar. You said 0. Now you
I thought 2. 0. So it just reminded me though. It just reminded me. And then so it's like a very small group, but yet like it's in order to actually go, well, moving into this new country, like you can either do one of 2 things. Right. One, you go, well, I'll just let people come to me and we'll figure this out. Or you have to be proactive and actually do the work to actually put yourself out there, because no one's actually coming to rescue you or coming to make sure you feel welcome. And that's exactly the mindset you did. Like you are being proactive to do the thing that needs to be done, so that you put yourself in situations to be surrounded by, whether it be friends network, whether it be professional network, or just a network in itself to help you establish yourself even further as a expert or as a person who's in need or whatever. Like you're positioning yourself that where people can come to you for certain things.
Yeah, it's 100%. And this is really relevant. I think, there's always going to be a business slant in terms of what we talk about, because we're always, we support people in business, but there's also life principles in there as well too. I guess it's a little bit of that, and this isn't something that I naturally do. I have to discipline myself to it, but it's a little bit of the Jim Carrey yes man, where invitations come and I've disciplined myself to go yes before I go no, I don't want to. It's like, well, what would happen if you said yes, right? And so that's how it started. And I remember distinctly, like I know even before our move and your move, Laurence, we've both lived in different areas, right? I've lived in different parts of Australia. I've moved around rural and city. And I'll never forget that when I moved to a country town called Dubbo in New South Wales, about 500 kilometres west of Sydney, we didn't know a soul either. And day one, I bought a practice there. And day one, someone who came in, I found that the community embraces you if you get involved with them. And so day one, I got in there and someone asked me a question. I said, yeah, I've been playing cricket. And they said, well, would you like to come to meet our cricket team? And I hadn't packed or everything, but I just went, yeah, okay, I'll be there tomorrow. And I turned up the next day. I started playing. I played that Saturday. So it was Thursday. I played that Saturday. Within like a year and a half, I was president of the club.
Wow.
And there were probably 100, 150 people by extension I got to know who ended up being clients of our practice.
Right. Wow, that's amazing.
Now I didn't go to get, I went and got to know people. And as a result of them getting to know me, it gave me the permission for them to find out more about what I did.
Yeah, and that's the angle. It needs to be your intention. Sorry, the intention needs to be pure, right? Like I think a lot of people sometimes go in intention. Okay, well, I'm going to go in that cricket club so I can get more patients. Wrong approach. Right? Wrong, because they're going to feel it and it's going to change. I think you got to just go and do the right things and go and do things not for just one objective, but and then good things will happen to you. I really believe in that. Right. But I'll come back to say that, I'm glad you had that great experience in Dublin. I've got to admit, one of the challenges I felt I moved around in Australia too, as well. It's not like I did not establish friendship groups and stuff, but I found it definitely harder. in Australia specifically, mostly because it's a brand new country for me over the last 20 years, but in different places, I definitely found it harder moving into a city as comparative to
Yep,
maybe in a
yep,
country town. I never moved into a country
100%,
town, so I can't really
100%.
comment on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Because I'm a city kid. I've grown up in the city,
Mm,
and my wife Bettina has basically grew up in the country,
mm,
and it is a phenomenal place to live and to work when you're in a country town, because by extension people make it a way of life in terms of meeting and greeting people.
yeah.
In the cities, energetically you feel it. People are hustle and bustle, they're walking away, they don't take an interest in their next door neighbor or what's going on. I grew in the city, lived in the city for many years. I couldn't tell you who lived three doors up unless I really made an effort of it. And yet, when I lived in the country, everybody in the community knew what street, what place they lived in, who their everything.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And you couldn't go socially out somewhere where you didn't know 50, 60, 70 people.
Yeah. And I think that's a massive difference, right? Because I think oftentimes it's not just, and I want to point that out, is because it is, I mean, it partly was my fault, and in a sense, not fault, but it was partly my responsibility for not going out and engaging myself into certain groups and stuff, because, either just I'm an introvert, or I just don't care, or I didn't feel like that I needed to, or whatever. I don't know why, but in hindsight, it was, but I do feel that there's a massive difference of what I'm doing here in Portugal than I have been in the past. And I'm relating this not for just people who move in countries, but just as like, this is just an important element for anybody going into business, into an area, into a community or an arena that they're not exposed to yet, or it's brand new for them, right? It takes an intent. So depending on the environment you're entering in, definitely changes the landscape. But also too, what changed the landscape is the intention of you taking the responsibility to go and engage. I think that's what we've been kind of talking about over the last 5 minutes. The like for me here, I'm not sure how your experience is in Spain, but like here, when I go engage, like whether I've been on a CrossFit class, and like 80, I would say 80% of people are Portuguese, right? So, but then you can spot the English speaking people very easily, and you go and have that conversation. And, from one conversation, you just kind of, meet up with other English people. And then that has just established, in which our friendship group is growing based on just that, and then it goes to paddle, and it goes to schools, and so on and so forth. But what I'm saying to you is that because they're English speaking, they're not Portuguese. And by definition of that, they're an expat. And by definition of that, they made a leap just like me, right? They made a move. They weren't born in Portugal. They were born somewhere else. They lived somewhere else. And we both decided to move here. And so right in the first 1 second of conversation, we both know we have something in common without even saying a word to each other. And I think because of that commonality makes an easier transition to have a discussion. Whereas if I'm going into a city, like say Sydney, and I walk in, I'm like, well, most of these people have either grew up here or lived here for so many years. It's a little harder to crack because they've already established a friendship. They don't necessarily need another friend, right? And I'm trying to crack into certain. It's harder. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't necessarily have the, not maybe personality to do so. But I know I could. I just didn't try as hard, and that's something I regretted, in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great learning experience that you've now taken to Portugal. It's really interesting. Like I reckon when you go back to school, childhood days, kids always sought for same. They look for commonality, and it's like, hey, you got red hair, I got red hair, we're friends, and that's how it starts. And sometimes you look at friendships in childhood, and you go, how did we become friends? You go, I don't know, man. I think I just sat with you next to you one day, and do you want to be a friend? Yeah, sure, no worries. But as adults, as we grow, we kind of break out of that. We've got our own stuff we're focusing on. We've got our own priorities, and we don't make an effort. And I think it gets hard. It does get harder as you get older, because you start, as we get older, your world starts closing in. And and right now, like, you've got kids that are in school age, so this is a time and period where it forces you to keep doing that, whether you want to or not.
Yes.
Times beforehand and times afterwards, when it's just you, the natural inclination for most people is to close in their world, not to expand it. Yeah. So consequently, you're going to have less friends than more over time unless you make an effort.
Yeah.
And, so I think you're 100% correct. The intention is really important. It's like, why am I doing this? But sometimes, it's the expression of life. It's like, hey, I love to dance, so I'm going to go out and just join a dance group to expand that part of myself.
Yeah.
And just for declaration, I'm an introvert like you, and the last thing I want to do is actually go out and dance. But if I thought that is what I needed to do, I would
Yeah.
find a way to force myself to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and I think
I don't
one
do
of
it.
the things
It
that
doesn't come naturally.
well, one of the things I've also, me and Karen, my wife, made a commitment to ourselves, like when we moved here, was that we're gonna have to do things differently. So like we were really intentional about, okay, like listen, we can't do the things that we did before in terms of how we engaged into the community. We go, we're gonna need to do something different because this is brand new. Like, most of these people don't speak English, so therefore it's like, no, we're gonna have to find our tribe, and we're gonna have to work at this. This is not something like we can just sit back and let people kind of invite us, and we have to do the work here. And so that was one intention, but we also did it for another reason, which was for our kids, right? Because our kids are modeling off of us. And one of the things I really sort of started to pick up is like our kids have friends, but they don't go out of their way to go do things with their friendship groups and and friends. And I'm thinking, okay, they're definitely picking that from us, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, because most of my friends are all over the world, so it's a little hard to get together. Like usually we have to travel somewhere else to go there. I don't have necessarily like a lot of friends around the corner, and so therefore we go, no, we're gonna have to change that. And so we were intentional, not just for ourselves, but we intentionally go, we have to allow ourselves to do the hard work so they can start mimicking it and start to learn through it. And we have to talk out loud about like the difficulties around that, the challenges that come along with it, so they also hear that how hard it actually can be at school and be okay with, because that's what mom and dad are going through too. And I think for us,
totally.
it's really an important element to make sure that they're learning from us. And it's been a fun experience doing that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really great lesson. I think you just said about modeling it for your kids, because fundamentally that's right. They're going to look for reassurance and say, hey, mum, dad, this is all new. I'm a bit daunted by it. And if you can go, yeah, I get that, because we're in the same boat and this is what we're doing, you're actually showing them a pathway. I think that's really helpful. So, so Laurence, let's just flip it a little bit, and let's just say someone was starting a business in a particular area, whether it's a town or city, doesn't matter, or they've been working at a business for a while, but they want to change something about it. Can you relate some of the things that you've done in your last 5 months, 6 months, that you could basically reflect back to people and say, this is what I found would be a really good strategy of integrating into a community and becoming preeminent, or maybe even last 6 months, or even just your experiences over many years of being in business?
Yeah. So on top of the things we just already mentioned, like having intent, like be intentional, and you got to, actually put in the work. I think one of the most important things is actually curiosity. So I'm going to use that as a fundamental baseline of it. Curiosity meaning like, so I sort of go back to the school example, but like when you're kind of meeting parents, most parents are going to want to meet parents from the same year group. So if it's grade 9, they're going to want to meet parents from grade 9. And so when you're in a brand new, we were just in this like brand new, all these new parents come into this group. Oh, like, how so-and-so, like what grade are your kids? And it goes, oh, you're in grade 6. Oh, I don't have any kids in grade 6. So like they almost kind of like, oh, we don't have the same age here. So should we talk or should we not talk? And it's like we can still have conversation, like just because our kids are not the same. So to me, it's about finding not just commonalities, but being curious, right? If you're genuinely curious about the other person, it doesn't matter like what grade or whatever background. So I think approaching a situation is be curious about other people, period. I find that when you ask enough questions about them, I learned this from, I don't know who, I think I learned it from Jay Abraham when he talked about a story. Like if you go to a bar and you meet someone brand new, like if you actually just spent an hour asking this person questions, not just for asking questions, but asking questions that you were curious about their family or about their business. How did they get started? Like, oh, that's amazing. Like, so, but how did you come up with that idea? And you have this conversation, they just spend like an hour talking to you. They might ask a couple of questions about you. They will walk away from that conversation thinking that was the best conversation I had, right? Why? Well, because they got the whole time talking about themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's the fundamental. And I learned that I was like, oh, curiosity, that's important, right? Because if you get curious but genuinely curious, right? It's not just like, there's not a system here, right? It's being genuinely curious about whatever thing you're going to talk about. Then you have a chance to really dive deeper into a conversation and dive deeper into the network. And that's really helps, I think, such an important element based on what we're talking about. So that would be my tip as one. So what about you?
I like that. I like that one. Well, for me, it's actually really interesting because for me, if you're giving, like I think if you become associated with something that's really important to you, that you love, you find value in, and you participate in that, you're going to meet people along the way who share that mutual interest, and that then becomes the avenue and portal from which to be able to start talking to them about what it is that you do and et cetera. An example I have for this many years ago, same country town, Dubbo, New South Wales. I'll never forget this experience where there was an orthopedic surgeon in town, and I wanted to get to know him. I wanted to meet a lot of the professionals, and they were really good. They were quite an open community health-wise, so we had a great network. One of the GPs delivered our baby, our son. He was the last baby that she ever delivered. It was one of those GPs who delivers babies as opposed to an obstetrician. But we went into this town. There's this orthopedic surgeon. I kept on trying to contact him. I'd call up his office. He's busy, can't talk to him, won't take an appointment, won't meet with me. I'd probably tried for 2-3 months. I just got crickets. I just got basically stonewalled. And I got invited to become a member of Rotary International. I became a Rotarian. And for anybody who doesn't know what Rotary is, it's pretty much a philanthropic organisation. It's usually business people get along together and they go out and do things for their community. And so I got invited on to speak, number one, at a Rotary Club, but then to be invited to join. Lo and behold, this same orthopedic surgeon was a member of this Rotary Club. And when he got to know me, not only did he take my calls, he would refer people to our office. And so what I learned, and I learned critically, is that when people get to know you and know what you're about and what your essence is, they then trust you on a personal level. So then whether you're a plumber, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're a chiropractor, whether you're a coach, whatever, they're going to trust you because they trust the person. And I really learned that a lot, and particularly in a country town where they see through people probably a lot quicker in the quality of the people. That was a profound lesson for me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Like that is such an important thing. And you're absolutely right. When you got to find the common grounds, and then sometimes it takes multiple exposure to you on various platforms. Like if you keep on showing up in various areas, not like, at the Rotary Club or at the gym, and then, on the street, like all of a sudden, like it just creates this like, oh, there's a sense of like, maybe we're meant to meet, or like at least we have something in common. And that could be a church group if you belong to a church group or religion. It could be a particular, groups like that. All of that stuff adds to an element, and we have now something in common. I think that there's definitely some trust there. So for me, another tip would be based on what you just sort of said. It's be genuinely who you are. Don't try to be someone you're not. And I know that sounds, of course, we know that, but like, let's talk through that. Okay. I think it's really, really important, because the thing is that as adults, we would think we know better, but let's face it, like of course, we still are hardwired to want to be tribal, want to be part of something. And there's a tendency to maybe try something or do something that you're not necessarily that's not aligned with who you are. And that may get you in the door per se, but in the long run, it's hard to hold on to that mask. So as adults, we should know by now that it's a lot easier to just not have a mask at all, and then trying to hold 100%. A mask that is not uniquely you. As kids, they're going through that process. It's hard to figure out, there's peer pressure of whether it be drugs, drinking, or any of whatever. That's hard. But as an adult, fundamentally, if there's certain things, like I don't drink, and I don't feel compelled to go to when someone says, let's have a beer or something, like, no, like I don't drink. And like, I'm okay with, obviously we're okay with it, but I don't need to apologize or justify or figure out what I need to. So not something really small, but the point is, be yourself. Don't have to try, because genuinely then they actually then can shape who you are and can figure you out. And then you present yourself in that way. That develops more trust. If there's similarities, if there isn't, then so be it.
Yeah, the whole conversation about masks could be like 5 podcast episodes in themselves, Laurence. I was there going, hold it, just steady over, because I love that theme, and I totally agree with that. I'm going to give you an example, Laurence. We're recording in t-shirts now, right? Yep. Both of us. For anybody who's just listening to audio. Now, anybody who would know Laurence and myself from previous careers 15, 20 years ago would know we're shirt and tie people, right?
A suit.
Never in our wildest dream. A suit. That's what I'm saying. Shirt and tie, suit. It's like, mate, I got photos of myself, Laurence, when I was a little kid, because my mum was a dressmaker, a seamstress, and at 5, I was like dressed up in shirt, suit. I'd go to school and suit, ties, the whole lot. Every other kid, and they're like, "Why are you dressing up like that?" It's like, because my mum does this stuff, and so I'm so comfortable in shirt and tie. It's not funny.
Yeah.
And yet, as time's gone on and I've just felt more comfortable in my own self, I've realized that I can drop that. Part of that was the persona that I felt I had to live up to. And part of it was just like, okay, well, this is the done thing. But I think you talked about dropping the mask and being yourself, because this is what I've learned is when you do that, the people who are waiting for that version of you to arrive suddenly go, I found my person, or I found the person in there. And so there's just a totally different shift, and you basically go, listen, whether you want to work with me or not, that's okay. But this is who I am. This is what I stand for. And I'd love you to be a part of that. But I'm not going to be anything other than me. And as you said, I don't drink either. I don't drink. And most of my not do, and I don't make them wrong. They put it on me for not, but I'm okay with it. I can hold up to that because I'm clear in who I am and what I stand for. And it doesn't have to be about alcohol. It's not a don't drink podcast. It's about
absolutely not.
I
didn't even know you didn't drink. So
no, man, I don't. I just it's just not something that I feel good doing. I just don't feel great in myself when I'm doing that. So, but it's not about drinking. It's about saying, okay, for you, it may be that you feel that you have to agree with everybody or do things so that people think you're nice rather than actually really tell them what you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the same
but
thing.
I will say, I will wear a suit because I look damn good in a suit.
You do that, and the hair that always looks like it's just been cut off. You got to go with your strengths, Laurence, and that's definitely
it's in context, right? So it's like it's definitely in context. And right now we don't need to be in a suit and tie because we're just chatting, like two guys chatting over online in two different countries in Europe, and we don't need to. Exactly. It's about being comfortable in your own skin, and that's hard to do. I think it's really hard to do. I'm trying to think if this is relevant to this conversation, but I think it is, because when you're going into new places and networking and meeting new people, it's hard not to put up a front. It's hard not to put up your best self. It's like it's going on a date, right? It's like, I've been with my wife for like 26 years now. Awesome. It's been a long time since it's been on a date, right? So, but right, I think building friendships, building relationship with your clients, all of that, it's the same thing. It's like dating, just not in a romantic way. And the reality is that we're all going to put up our best selves, the first couple of times, because that's what we tend to do. But so it's what I'm saying is it is really difficult, and I want to just say that out loud. It is difficult and it's challenging not to try to shift that mask or try to present all the best parts about you, right? But I always got to remember, this is a long game. I'm not trying to win your friendship in a day. We're not gonna the chance of me and you becoming best friends on the first time I ever meet you it's possible, but it's probably it's not very highly likely. It's going to take the intention of going, hey, I had a great chat with Jim. We first met, I don't know, I would say I venture about 7 years ago, I would say maybe. Yeah. And we had a conversation, we had lunch, with a bunch of other people. And then we just never connected again till, I don't know, maybe last year, maybe a year and a half, a year ago, maybe so. And then, and then it's like this constant exposure over time, and then hinting at something that, hey, we should consider something maybe in the future. These things take time to develop, just like a marriage, just like a relationship. Everything takes time. And I think people, when they go into, so that's, I guess, the next rule, or I don't know if it's a rule, but another thing, when you go into these networking situations or building yourself and building that rapport with your new clients, play the long game. Don't try to go for the home run on the very first time you meet a community or a group. You got to play the long game and just go. It's mere exposure over time, and being you and being intentional. All of a sudden, that will pay off at the end. Don't go for the short wins. Go for the long wins. Play the long game. Enjoy the process, and just trust the process.
100%. And you're right though, Laurence, in that it goes against what biologically we're hardwired to do, and that is to connect, to be part of a group. Because when historically, if we were cut off from a group, that was akin to decreasing your chances of survival. So most people don't like that feeling of being separate, alone, being someone who deviates from what everybody else does. And particularly in the formative years, the teenagers and beyond, they all want, if you ever look at a group of teenagers together, the commonality, they dress the same, they look the same, they want to be part of the same group,
Yeah.
right? And it takes a particular person who says, I can see that, but I'm gonna basically run my own course. And a great bit of wisdom that I wish I had known this earlier on, but it's the 20-40-60 rule of aging. Have you ever come across that?
No.
The 20-40-60 rule basically says when you're 20, you think that everybody's thinking and talking about you.
Right.
And you care what everybody thinks about you, right?
Yeah.
When you're 40, you don't care what anybody thinks about you. And when you're 60, you don't care. And you know, they actually weren't talking about you at all, and you couldn't care at all what they were thinking about you.
Right.
So fundamentally, it goes along the lines of as you age and theoretically get more comfortable in your own skin, you beat to the rhythm of your own drum, you're more comfortable in the way you do things. And so you go, look, I'm going to do it this way instead of that way because that gives me personal fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I think a really beautiful place, you know, everybody that I coach, that I work with, I when I'm working with them, we want to help define what it is that they came to help us work with. But fundamentally, we always go for fulfillment goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
We always go for okay. So why are you doing this? So is the process going to make you happy? Are you going to happily achieve? And so something essential comes out of being true to self first and then acting from that place, rather than acting thinking that you're going to get a feeling when in actual fact you're missing that whole boat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's such an important thing. But I wonder if, it's just a curiosity thing. I wonder if, you mentioned the 20-40-60. Is it age, or is it because like it takes that long for us to kind of discover that?
Part of it is, right? Part of it is aging because, when you're in a teenager and you want to fit in, you're really conscious of what's going on and what everybody else says and does. And so, even in the first years of when you're, the new parent, I read every resource, every book, everything that I could possibly find because I was uncertain. I was looking for certainty. And so I sought it in resources, in people. I wanted to do what everybody else had done before.
Yeah.
And there's wisdom in that. But then you get to a point where you suddenly go, you know what, hang on, we're on our fifth child now. We've done this several times. I trust myself. It's okay. And so consequently, you develop confidence in self to do it your own way.
Yeah.
Yes, being mindful of the important things, but not buying into the things that the insecurities, I guess. And so it plays out all the time where, particularly in this day and age that I'm seeing with people, is that the fundamental principles of life, relationships, business are the same. Connections, trust, rapport, value, they're the same. Now, we've invalidated some of them because of our pathways to increase efficiency, i.e. social media, etc. But fundamentally, the pillars that keep people strong are still the same.
Yeah.
And the more you are able to harness those by being true to yourself, I think that increases your chances that you'll find someone who's really looking for that, as opposed to the front of stage version that you talked about on that we portray to the world isn't actually the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's also an important lesson for us parents too, as well. Like, I know I fall guilty of this, and it's a challenge to hold back. It's easy for me to say to my daughter Kaya or my son Christian, it's like, don't let anybody tell you, not that you can't be yourself, or like just go be yourself. Like, it's easy for me, right? Because I'm older. But I also got to put myself, I always try to remember, like, yeah, but they're like 14, they're still like 11. They want to fit in. There's that urge. And I can't, although how much wisdom as a parent you want to share with your kids, they're not ready to hear it or experience it yet. And you got to let them go through that journey. Cause man, dude, I was a freaking lonely kid, man. Like that was one of my biggest challenge, growing up. We can dive into that in a different podcast, but it was a challenging period of time, like high school. I was telling my daughter, like, I hated high school. Oh my God, did I hate high school. And it's challenging because like you want to fit in, but if no one lets you in, you're like, and you don't have the tools, you kind of like, man, like, what am I, who am I, like, and all that, all these questions start popping up. But at the same time, in hindsight, like 20, 30 years later, I look back and go, you know what, maybe the connections that I have now and the position that I put myself in these, friendships, groups and networks and exposure to different people around the world is probably stem from my eternal desire of a kid that I never got. And so I ended up
Yep.
pursuing it in my life as not as a goal,
Yep.
but as like a desire to do it and force myself to really dig deep to find how to do that. If I didn't
Yep.
go through that experience, if I was totally accepted in high school or totally accepted in elementary school and all that stuff, I don't know if I would have turned out the way I've turned out, right? So, and I think
Mm.
that's an important thing for us parents, anyways, for parents to kind of remind ourselves that sometimes your kids got to go through what they got to go through. You want to guide
Yep.
them, you're not trying to make it harder, but you still got to let them go through it.
It's funny you say that, Laurence. Not funny in the ha funny, but insightful in the way you're saying that, because I think I've mentioned before there's a guy called Ben Harvey in Sydney who I did a program with. It was basically one of my coaching, business, public speaking, all those platforms. There's a whole lot of courses, which are phenomenal courses, by the way. Big unsolicited plug to them. But one thing that Ben said that struck me, which is profound, he says, I remember him speaking to a group of people at the seminar and the workshop that we were doing the 4 or 5 days, and he said, "What's the ultimate objective of business?" And everybody says, "Provide a service, turn a profit," and then the normal things that most people come up with. Ben came up with a statement that says the ultimate purpose of business is to find the answer to your own problem, and in solving it for other people, you ultimately help yourself. So I'm going to go back and say that, right? Because in your case, if you find the solution to the problem that you had as a kid, i.e., I wasn't part of, there was loneliness, and you, by extension of your network groups, are helping other people connect, what you're doing is that you're reinforcing that as a way of life. So consequently, you're healing that part of that wound that you had as a kid.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And when I sat with that, I went, holy smoke, that's so profound, because that's when you live a life of fulfillment. You actually have this purpose, and you're driven to do things over and above I've just got to get by. And that really resonated, because then I reflected back on my life and in my world. I went, there's 100% reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now is purely because of the challenges I had as a kid, right? And so you can link that up. And this is the whole purpose, I guess, of what we're talking about, is when you cycle through that and take the learnings and find solutions, you're then actually able to help yourself, help your community by leaning into and being comfortable in who you are for that reason. But when you talk about getting people together, I'm one of the people who's flying over to Portugal in a month. I'd love you to let people know about the program. So let's. I'm going to put you on the spot here and just get you to talk a little bit about that for people who may not know. That's some of the programs that you run. But I'm super excited about it. It's happening in about a month from the time we're recording now. And you reached out and went, "Hey, listen, I'm running this program. I'd love to have you there. Would you come?" I went, "Sure, done," and I'm coming. So, but you're doing what you just said. You're bringing people together. In an environment, you're helping other people and helping that part of you that was missing having people around. So consequently, it gives you a life of purpose and meaning. I know I got really deep there, but something just switched exactly in my head.
Well, that's exactly what my point was, is that and this is always on my mind. And I know you got older kids, so, you would have gone through this experience, but like, I'm in this process. I know what I do and say with my kids right now can have an absolute impact on their life, right? On their life journey. And, but one of the things that I'm always consciously aware is that our kids today in general, I'm just going to make a generalized statement, is that they don't go through that much hardship because we don't give them that much hardship, right? And so that's so that's what I worry about. Like, that kind of keeps me up at night. And because there's a part of me that knows how important those hardships are for the development of who they will become. But at the same time, also then I'm a very protective father that want to make sure I just make sure that I take good care of them, so I'm torn as a parent. And I think we'll probably discuss this in a different podcast, but it's such an important,
I think that's a good one.
It's such an important balance that you have to make as a parent, and the choices you have to make. To recognize that, and there's no right answer. I'm not looking for an answer, right? I'm not looking for an answer, but I'm aware, and and those challenges are going to be there. And I feel in today's society, we are missing. A lot of people are, especially the last 2 years of what's been happening, we are missing that connection. We're missing connecting with like-minded people. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm creating that event called Beyond. And it's like we're going beyond the mastermind, beyond the typical seminars you go to. Like this, I didn't want to create another version of something else. I really wanted to see. I mean, I have no idea if it's going to be successful. And by the time this goes out, maybe we'll have done it, and then maybe we'll find out exactly that it wasn't the right thing. I don't care. That's the point. I don't care if it's successful or not. I care about the people that are coming. I just want to do three things with you. I want to, number one, explore, experience, and elevate each other. So I want to explore the connections that we have, explore the genius that, Jim, what you're going to bring to the table. I want to explore what Matt's going to bring to the table, or what Rachel's going to bring to the table. I don't know what that is. I want to learn. I don't want to be the one leading. I'll facilitate, but I want to be like, put together some great people and go, okay, like, what can I learn from you? Like, how can we all learn from each other, from a variety of things, from like building businesses, having great relationships, to crypto or whatever, and then experience life together, experience dinners, and like go have some fun and exploring different places, and then elevate each other's knowledge and friendships. And that's what I really want to create. I just want to
That's
have
awesome.
fun with
Well,
it. That's the
well,
point.
that's pretty much what you'd said from the outset, and I think there were a couple of things that resonated for me when you'd said that. Was there's an opportunity to, like, personal growth is one of my top three values. So it's like, I'm, as Tony Robbins used to say, you're either growing or you're dying.
Yep.
You basically, and if you're green, you grow. You're ripe, you rot. And so I have to keep growing in some way, shape, or form. Stagnation to me is like, nah. That to me, I just makes my skin crawl. So an opportunity to grow, to be around people who have that as a way of life, and also see a new place and you get. So to me, it was like tick, 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 tick. So that's why
I haven't told you
I'm
what
on
my
there.
next.
But
I gotta say, like, I met someone the
I
other day.
also like surprise. I always like surprise as well. So don't tell me if it's gonna.
Well, it won't. It's not a surprise, but
it's,
I'm just preparing you.
okay.
I'm just preparing for you for 2023. Like, I got this idea. Met up this person. We're talking luxury yachts, cruising over in Croatia. Ooh, this could happen. This could be
I want to go
thing.
to Croatia.
Well, we'll chat more about that.
And getting to Croatia is so much easier from this side of the world than from before, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So much easier. But what you're doing, and I know I kind of deviated a little bit, but was just to highlight pretty much what you're doing by being in Portugal. This is just me looking at basically a 20,000 foot view and going, Laurence, you're in a new environment. You're leading a life of design. You're leading a life by example, by modeling to your kids exactly what it's like for you, and you're showing them the pathway and the process. You've made some decisions that I'm going to do things differently here. I've got to reach out. I've got to establish connections. I can't just be passive, right? And you're establishing your community, and we talked about this even when we were in concept form with the podcast. We basically said, listen, if we're going to get on the podcast and just be another podcast like everybody else, and then I don't want to do it, right? So whoever will listen to us will listen to us. But it's going to come from that place of, we want to do something different, right? We don't know what it looks like, but we're open to exploration and curiosity. But what you've also done is that you're doing the same thing with your community. You're kind of going out there on a limb and going, I'm going to establish it here on the other side of the world with people I know and some of them I don't know, trying something new. That's what it's about. This is what this podcast episode is about. That is the embodiment. And it was I kind of led you into that question. Yeah. That information, because to me it personified exactly what we're talking about, exactly what you've done.
Well, it's what this podcast stands for, right? The Wabi Sabi, the whole thing is about, finding the perfection in the imperfections. And we're in a discovery phase of our lives. And I think we're always in a discovery phase for our life for personal growth. And I think this is where we want to inspire, and we want to encourage people to take a chance on themselves. And it doesn't have to be big, massive leaps, but take a chance to do something imperfect, do something and challenge yourself to, don't always have to be perfect before you press go and go after it, whatever that is. And I guarantee you, every single person who's listening or watching this right now, there is something in you that you've always wanted to do. The question is like, what has stopped you? I mean, there's obviously a reason what stopped. There's reasons and why that stopped you, but question it, like, why? What specifically has stopped you? And there could be very valid reasons of why you haven't done it. But I would then question yourself, are those reasons really valid, or are those just excuses to stop you and prolong the decision that you're about to make? Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. We have spoken to so many people that say, hey, I want to move too. That's crazy. Like, we've been thinking about that too. Right. But our decision took,
Yeah.
I don't
Or
know.
I wish I could do
wish.
that.
Yeah. Well, you
That's the
can.
big one
It's
that
just
I
a
found as
plane. It's a
well.
plane ride.
Yeah.
Because you don't
Yeah.
understand. No, I understand because I've done it. Right?
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their own reasons. I'm not saying that it was easy. Like, and I'm not trying to paint that picture. This was easy. It's still very difficult. I don't have a home. I'm still living in freaking Airbnb for the last 6 months, and it's not cheap to do that. Anyways, all I'm saying is look at what you want to do. What's the excuses? I'm not suggesting you go and do it. I'm just saying just question it. Be curious about like what if you actually went and did it? What would you learn? How would you become on the other side of that? And we have a very limited amount of time on this world. But at the same time, life is long. There's so much time in this world. So it's like you got to find that contrast between that life is short and life is long, and then go and actually decide what kind of life you want to live. And every moment you have that choice to make that decision. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And this episode about networking is about embracing that challenge to put yourself in difficult situations, to go into a new community, go into a new networking environment, go into something and explore something new, but it has to be to yourself, obviously who you are. It's got to be intentional. You got to be curious, and you got to stop wearing masks. All of those things we talked about all lean into like helping you, guiding you through this process to get closer and closer to that newer version that you're trying to become.
Beautiful. I've got nothing to add after that, Laurence. I reckon that's a great place for us to wrap up for today, and look forward to being with everybody again next time.
All right, we'll see you next time. And as always, we're going to be on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, wherever you can find us on these podcast networks. Please share this, though, however, with everybody, because we'll love to have more and more people get insights. If you've been getting values of this, maybe, rate us wherever all these ratings will be, and to help us spread our message of Wabi Sabi. Talk soon.
Bye.